Hey, mighty companion. This is Earl Purdy, and I'm here to do your next Course in Miracles lesson with you. And that lesson is lesson 96. Salvation comes from my one self. Salvation comes from my one self. Salvation comes from my one self. Peace comes from my one self. Although you are one self, you experience yourself as two. You experience yourself as good and evil, loving and hating, mind and body. This sense of being split into opposites induces feelings of acute and constant conflict. That means leads to frantic attempts to reconcile the contradictory. You're trying to have frantic attempts to reconcile the contradictory aspects of this self-perception of yourself as at least two. You have sought many such solutions and none of them has worked. The opposites you see in you will never be compatible, but one self exists. The fact that truth and illusion cannot be reconciled, no matter how you try, what means you use, and where you see the problem, must be accepted if you are to be saved. The fact that truth and falsity cannot be reconciled, no matter how hard you try, what means you use, and where you see the problem, must be accepted if you would be saved. Until you have accepted that you cannot reconcile truth and falsity, you will attempt an endless list of goals you cannot reach until you have accepted that you cannot reconcile truth and falsity. A senseless series of expenditures of time and effort, hopefulness and doubt, each one as futile as the one before and failing as the next one surely will. Problems, do you know that problems that have no meaning cannot be resolved within the framework? Problems that have no meaning are set. Two selves in conflict could not be resolved, which means good and evil have no meeting place. The self you made up can never be yourself, nor can yourself be split in two and still be what yourself is and forever must be. A mind and body cannot both exist. A mind and body cannot both exist. Make no attempt to reconcile the two, for one denies the other can be real. In other words, if you are physical, if you are just a body, your mind is gone from your self-concept, for your mind has no place in which your mind could really be a part of you. If you are spirit, then the body must be meaningless to your reality if you must be spirit. Do you know that spirit makes use of mind as means to find its self-expression? And the mind which serves the spirit is at peace and filled with joy. The mind which serves the spirit, its power comes from spirit. And the mind which serves the spirit is fulfilling happily its function here. The mind that serves the spirit is fulfilling happily its function here. Yet mind can also see itself divorced from spirit. Mind can perceive itself within a body that the mind confuses with itself. Without the mind's function, then the mind has no peace, and happiness is alien to the mind's thoughts. Yet, do you know that mind apart from spirit cannot think? The mind apart from spirit has denied its source of strength and sees itself as helpless, limited, and weak. Dissociated from its function now, the mind that has divorced itself from spirit thinks it is alone and separate, attacked by armies massed against itself and hiding in the body's frail support. Now must the mind apart from spirit reconcile unlike with like, for this is what the mind thinks that it is for. Waste no more time on this. Who can resolve the senseless conflicts which a dream presents? What could the resolution mean in truth? What purpose could the resolution serve? What is the resolution for? Do you know that salvation cannot make illusions real, nor solve a problem that doesn't exist? Perhaps you hope that the truth can solve a problem that doesn't exist. Yet would you have God's plan for the release of yourself bring pain to you and fail to set you free? Don't you know yourself retains its thoughts and they remain within your mind and in the mind of God. The Holy Spirit, the voice for God within you, holds salvation, which is peace in your mind, and offers your mind the way to peace. Salvation is a thought. Salvation is a thought you share with God because His voice accepted it for you and answered in your name that it was done. Thus is salvation, which is peace, kept among the thoughts yourself holds dear and cherishes for you. We will attempt today to find this thought, whose presence in your mind is guaranteed by your Creator who speaks to you from your one self. Our hourly 5-minute practicing will be a search for God within your mind. Salvation, which is peace, comes from this one self, through Him who is the bridge between your mind and it. Wait patiently and let the voice for God speak to you about yourself and what your mind can do, restored to it and free to serve its will. Begin with saying this: salvation comes from my one self. My one self's thoughts are mine to use. Then seek the thoughts of your real self, the one self, and claim these thoughts as your own. These are your own real thoughts you have denied, and let your mind go wandering in a world of dreams to find illusions in their place. Here are your thoughts, the only thoughts you have. Salvation, which is your healing, is among the thoughts you have. Find it there. If you succeed, the thoughts that come to you will tell you you are saved and that your mind has found the function that it sought to lose. Yourself will welcome it and give it peace. Restored in strength, it will again flow out from spirit to the spirit and all things created by the spirit as itself. Your mind will bless all things. Confusion done, you are restored, for you have found yourself. Don't you know? Yourself knows that you cannot fail today. Perhaps your mind remains uncertain yet a little while. Be not dismayed by your mind also being uncertain a little while. Enjoy your self-experiences. Yourself will save for you, and that joy will yet be yours in full awareness. Every time you spend 5 minutes of the hour asking Holy Spirit, who joins your mind and your real self, you offer Holy Spirit and God Himself another treasure to be kept for you. Each time today you tell your frantic mind your salvation, peace, and happiness comes from your one self, you lay another treasure in your growing store. And all of it is given everyone who asks for it and will accept the gift. Accept the gift. Think then how much is given unto you to give this day, that it be given you. And the lesson is, salvation comes from my one self. Salvation comes from my one self. That's the same as saying, peace comes from my one self. Peace comes from my one self. That's the same as saying, healing comes from my one self. Healing comes from your one self. Happiness comes from your one self. So say, salvation comes from my one self. Salvation comes from my one self. Salvation comes from one self. Salvation comes from my one self. Salvation comes from my one self. Salvation comes from your one self. Salvation comes from your one self. This is Earl Purdy. Check me out at www.earlpurdy.com and let peace extend from my mind to yours. Salvation comes from my one self.